Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at Judge Mathis, joined as always by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him at Tilt Money, and it is our first official non what's the word I'm looking for? Grieving
Game
error
related,
game
game
related
related show.
episode of the Air Raid Hour. But before we get to Bill's off-season talk, I got a little clip here I gotta play.
Are we having fun yet?
And I play that clip because Brittany Mahomes and Jackson Mahomes have been dethroned. They are officially out of the playoffs, and the Kansas City Chiefs are just like us onto the offseason. So I had to get that one off my chest early on and just let the people know that Brittany Mahomes and Jackson Mahomes are sitting at home. But before we get started tonight, first of all, thank you to everyone in the comment section. We got Randy coming in first saying Bills draft season, a tradition unlike any other. David Kane coming in saying, let's go. I'm hyped for this year's Air Raid off season. Spin's already ready for free agency. And we've already got your boy Lettuce coming in talking about punter. We are a minute and 58 into our first off-season show, and we got a punter. Super chat. Matt Arazia out of San Diego State, the man who can literally punt the ball over them mountains. For anyone who hasn't heard of Matt Arazia from San Diego State, the guy can kick it a country mile. He's literally known for his like 80, 90-yard punts. It's ridiculous. And we're going to talk about him plenty this offseason. But I mean, before we start today, I don't know. I need to ask you a question because all off season, like I turn on these podcasts and these shows, and I'm not trying to criticize because everyone's got a different cup of tea. But like I'll turn on Joe Marino on Monday, and it's him and Joe Miller counting down like the best memories of the past 3 years. I remember last year, Joe Miller asked me to come to a show where we ranked like the Buffalo Bills top 10 touchdowns and all that stuff. Like, I don't know about you, but like, I need like 4 to 5 years to get nostalgic after like a season, or like I need a new era before I get like nostalgic. Like I can talk about the drought all day, but when it comes to like the last 2 or 3 years, maybe this just makes me a bad fan, but like I don't appreciate it. I just want to move on and get to where we're going next and start talking off season. I don't know. Does that make me a bad fan that I'm just not ready to be nostalgic about it yet?
No, I think that's normal. I think that it's always nice, I think, at the end of the season to maybe go back and watch the highlights of the season. But I think what's going to really, make this all kind of worthwhile, if you will, is, 10, 15 years from now, we go back and we really have that chance to reflect on this era of the Buffalo Bills with Josh Allen at the helm. And watching highlights and everything's fine and ranking touchdowns and all that's great, but wouldn't you rather like be like, okay, like career best games of Josh Allen's
Mhm.
like 15-year career down the like that to me is like so much more meaningful. Like getting that 30 for 30 of the Bills finally winning the Super Bowl, that 6-part series like the Bulls had with Jordan and like
Mhm.
Josh Allen's the main guy sitting on the chair talking and talking about like how he took it personally that he didn't make the Pro Bowl and all this stuff after the fact. That's the kind of stuff that like I'm thinking bigger picture, right?
Mhm.
So when we get into the off-season talk, that's kind of like why this is stuff that you and I like really like to talk about, because we're always thinking about like, well, what can this team do to get to the next level?
Mhm.
And one of the questions I have for you really to start out this off-season is like, are the Bills in any better position this offseason than they were last offseason? Have they even progressed from where they were a year ago heading into
Mhm.
the offseason after losing the AFC Championship game heading into this offseason? And it's a question I don't know the answer to really, because I feel like as we start getting into this offseason talk, we're going to be having some similar conversations that we did last year, and it raises the kind of question overarching question is like, are the Bills kind of back to where they were last offseason? And part of me is like, well, they're a very good team, so it's very hard to make these
Mhm.
big jumps. Like I always use the golf analogy, right? It's like it's always easier to if you're like shooting 100 to go from 100 to 90 than it is to go from 90 to 80, even though it's the same amount of strokes, right? Like
Yeah.
you're at a point where it's very hard to make incremental, wholesale improvements. And that's where we are with this team, which is why these off-season conversations are fascinating because it's like these little things here and there that you try to pick apart. But no, I don't think it makes you a bad fan. I think it's just, that's just the kind of talk we like, right? So it's all good.
Yeah, and we got David W coming in saying, "Don't feel bad, Judge. I'm still mad at the end of the season. Y'all shall help me cope." Well, hey, I'm happy that we can help you cope here, and this is what it's all about. Like, what does this football team have to do to overcome? What does this team have to do to go out there and get a ring? And that's what we're devoting really the rest of this offseason to. What sort of draft prospects are we looking at? How do we want to construct this roster? We're going to get into coaching staff in a moment before we get into our offensive preview of the Senior Bowl. Last year, the Buffalo Bills very much took a status quo approach and made very small changes. They don't even have a choice this offseason. They are going to have to make some monumental changes, and it's going to start with the coaching staff. Not even getting into the player aspect of personnel, the coaching staff. Brian Daboll had his introductory press conference in New York today. He is the head coach of the New York Giants. Mike Silver came out, and it's already been confirmed by Tim Graham of The Athletic. Bobby Johnson, whose contract was actually up with the Buffalo Bills, he purposely, it appears to me like he intentionally timed this so the Buffalo Bills couldn't block it. He refused a contract extension. His contract was up. He leaves with Brian Daboll. So Bobby Johnson is now gone. So you have Daboll gone. You have Bobby Johnson gone. I don't think that's the last of the offensive coaching staff that you will see. Ryan Wendell was the guy, assistant offensive line coach, was the guy that you saw next to Brian Daboll in the booth every single week. You will probably see Ryan Wendell leave either to New York or maybe even, if he doesn't get promoted in Buffalo, he's got those New England connections. A guy like Josh McDaniels in Las Vegas could come calling for Ryan Wendell. And Shea Tierney, Brian Daboll's protege, assistant quarterbacks coach. To me, he's a shoo-in to go be Brian Daboll's quarterbacks coach in New York. So that really just leaves the sort of mystery around Ken Dorsey right now. And is Ken Dorsey going to go to New York, call plays for Brian Daboll? Is he going to stay in Buffalo? Brandon Beane said he was going to do his due diligence. He interviewed T. Martin and Edgar Bennett today. We'll get to those two in a moment. But what are your thoughts on Ken Dorsey possibly leaving to go to New York when Josh Allen said, like, this is my dude?
I think you have a situation where Ken Dorsey has a really good agent, number one. And number two, I think the reports out there are true, right? Like he was getting lured away by Brian Daboll to come to New York. And it seems like, at least to me, maybe the Bills were making a last minute push to try to maybe keep him, right? And the money, we don't know what the money was going to be from the Giants, but we also know that Ken Dorsey is in a situation where he's got leverage right now between these two teams, right? Both teams clearly want him. And on one side, you have Daboll and the Giants like trying to put together the staff. On the other side, you have Josh Allen, who's publicly come out in support of Ken Dorsey. And it's kind of got the Bills in kind of a sticky situation, right? Because how much are you willing to pay a guy like Dorsey who hasn't called plays, but knowing that your quarterback has endorsed him? Now, Josh, let's not kind of put Josh in harm's way here, because we all know that Josh is a really coachable guy, and like whatever the Bills decide to do, I'm sure they'll have him involved to an extent in kind of their thought process around interviews or the decision making. Fine, but Ken Dorsey right now is probably in a tough spot himself, right? Does he go to New York, where he's likely to maybe be able to call plays for the Giants? It hasn't been officially determined yet, but if you're Ken Dorsey and you have a guaranteed offensive coordinator job on the table, would you not take it? Of course you would. That was the story on Friday, right? Things have changed slightly because now it's like, well, maybe the Bills are making a push now to have him as their offensive coordinator. And so that's maybe why you haven't seen this finalized yet. I still would say it's, I mean, I don't know what percentage would you put on it now that Ken Dorsey remains with the Bills and becomes their offensive coordinator? It's got to be higher than it was on Friday, right?
Yeah, to me, the fact that it didn't get signed over the weekend, the fact that a deal wasn't done over the weekend tells me that Ken Dorsey is sort of playing the Giants and the Bills off of each other. But I also think that This is the Bills. They're saying, listen, Ken, we like you, we love you, you are very much in the running to be the offensive coordinator, but we are not going to just anoint you
Yes.
the offensive coordinator of this football team. We are going to look at our options elsewhere, and if somebody blows us away, they blow us away. I mean, I think back to, what is it, a decade and a half ago now, when Mike Tomlin became the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. That was Ken Wisenhunt's job, right? But the Rooney Rule forced, Rooney, the owner of the Steelers, to interview Mike Tomlin. He was blown away by Mike Tomlin. You saw last year where Brian Daboll looked like he was going to Los Angeles to coach the Chargers with his buddy, who was, his buddy from St. Joe's or whatever, his high school buddy, Tom Telesco, and Tom Telesco was blown away by Brandon Staley. So it happens. The Buffalo Bills have to go out there and do their due diligence and see who they want to be their next offensive coordinator, because you're handing the keys literally of an offense to a quarterback in his prime. The next 3 to 5 years of Josh Allen's career is his Super Bowl window. Once he hits the big 3-0, he's still going to have plenty of chances to win Super Bowls. But the big window is right here, 25 to 30. That's where Rodgers won his, and then has been close and knocking on the door ever since, right? Russell Wilson won his in the late 20s and has been knocking on the door since 30, but hasn't quite been able to get there. So, unless your name is Tom Brady, this 25 to 30-year-old window is the window where most of these guys get theirs and then are chasing it the rest of their career, and they come close, and some of them do get it, but some of them don't as well. And, some of these stories that coaches weren't signing extensions, right? Like Bobby Johnson didn't sign an extension. That might also try to tell you that maybe the Bills were trying to cheapskate their coaching staff a little bit. Maybe the Pagulas were trying to save a dime here and there, not willing to offer like raises to their coaches, right? Like, oh, Bobby Johnson, I want a pay raise. Well, no, Bobby, you can stay the next year and your contract is up and you can go test the market, which is what he obviously did taking the New York Giants job. Maybe this is a situation where, the Pagulas have just been maybe cheapskating their assistants a little bit, and Ken Dorsey's trying to leverage it into a payday here with the New York Giants. But I think when all is said and done, and when the Bills are done interviewing people, I really do think that it's going to come back to Ken Dorsey. And I think Ken Dorsey's going to wait the Buffalo Bills out, because I think this is where he wants to be. And I wouldn't be surprised when all is said and done if Davis Webb comes in as the quarterback coach as well. I think that's where Josh Allen's most comfortable, is with guys like Davis Webb, with guys like Ken Dorsey. And I think the Bills will finally come to that realization at some point. What do you think about Ken Dorsey? Like, what percentage are you putting it at?
I mean, I think it's over 50% at this point, right? I think on Friday, we thought he was gone. And I think the more time that goes by where he obviously doesn't sign with the Giants, but the more time that goes by where he remains, quote, unsigned or on the market, or still with the Bills organization in his, current position, that will change. But the more time that goes by, the more likely it is that Ken Dorsey becomes the guy, I think. So I think each passing day where there's really no news, I think it's more and more likely that Ken Dorsey would be the guy. So I put it at like maybe just over 50% right now. But I still don't think it's like a huge percentage right now. I mean, as we start to drift towards the middle of the week and maybe even towards the end of this week, and we still haven't heard any news, then I'd say maybe by this upcoming weekend, you'd have Ken Dorsey in place.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And if you just look at this staff in totality, like I said, I don't know. Are there any other changes that you think like we've sort of, let's just do a roundup here. We pretty much think let's go position by position here. Brian Daboll, obviously offensive coordinator, gone. Quarterbacks coach Ken Dorsey. We are pretty convinced that he is going to stay, but there is a chance he could head off to New York as well. Shea Tierney, the assistant quarterbacks coach, we believe that he is gone. Running backs coach Kelly Skipper. My guess is that's a McDermott guy coming from Carolina. Kelly Skipper stays. Chad Hall. I think Chad Hall's a McDermott guy too. I think Chad Hall is not going anywhere. And I think he did, and he's under contract. The Bills would block it. The wide receivers are obsessed with that dude. We saw that video last year, how they bought him the truck. He's the hype. We can't lose the hype man on the sidelines. We can't lose the hype man that is Chad Hall. I also don't think that Chad Hall has enough on his resume to really be considered for a play calling position yet either.
I
Maybe
agree.
He could get more added onto his plate. Like if Ken Dorsey becomes offensive coordinator. Maybe Chad Hall becomes passing game coordinator. Maybe he could get like a title bump, but I don't see Chad Hall going anywhere. Bobby Johnson gone. He is heading to New York. And then last but not least, assistant offensive line coach Ryan Wendell. Again, he's got the option to go to New York, even though they now have an offensive line coach. He was next to Brian Dable in the booth. And Ryan Wendell also has those New England ties. New England is going to be losing some coaches because Josh McDaniels has left, and Josh McDaniels is taking that New England sort of coaching tree to Las Vegas. So there are some opportunities where maybe Ryan Wendell sees his way out, because I do believe Brian Dable was his connection to Buffalo. And I also, how could I forget the man who caused a panic this week in Rob Boris with the typo on his bio, tight ends coach Rob Boris. I also believe that's a McDermott guy, so I don't think Rob Boris is going anywhere either. So at the end of the day, Skipper, Boris, Hall probably stays. We probably see Dorsey stay. We probably get a new quarterbacks coach. We probably get a new offensive line coach, and we go from there. So a lot of panic button pressing right now on social media. Twitter is my social media of choice, so that's where I'm seeing it. I think we all just need to take a deep breath. If it happens, it happens. The Buffalo Bills have Josh Allen, and we're a top 3 offense in the National Football League next year. We will be able to find qualified coaches to come in here. I wouldn't lose sleep over it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Wendell's probably the likely one to go. It seems like he would have a chance to really have a shot at the offensive line coaching job, the head offensive line coaching job, either in Vegas or New England, unless maybe Ken Dorsey says, "Hey, Ryan Wendell, you can be our offensive line coach here in Buffalo," assuming Ken Dorsey has the option to pick, some of his staff. That could be a possibility, but I would say he's probably the most likely to leave out of that group you mentioned. But it's like you said, it's not a panic button situation. There will be coaches that will want to come here. It would be wise for the Bills, and even if it ends up being Ken Dorsey, for him to kind of do his own due diligence on the rest of his staff. I would imagine Ken Dorsey is a first-time OC and a first-time play caller is going to want some familiarity in that room. So you might only see a few changes, but that's okay. People are going to want to come.
Our guy Rev Rhodes on Twitter talks about Mike Shula a lot as a possible offensive coordinator candidate. I don't like that, but Mike Shula could come in as maybe an offensive assistant, a guy who's called plays before. Obviously, Rob Boris has called plays before too. Just someone that Ken Dorsey is familiar with, who could be a sounding board for Ken Dorsey. So maybe there is a spot open for Mike Shula on this coaching staff. I just would
Maybe
rather it not
quarterbacks
be.
coach.
Maybe quarterbacks coach. Yeah, I just would rather it not be as offensive coordinator. By chance comes in, says, I don't want to promote from within. We could use some fresh eyes in the building. Maston Park comes in and says, all I want from the next offensive coordinator is for them to still incorporate the Earhart Perkins offense. And your boy Lettuce comes in and says, I want to get Anthony Lynn to see what he can do with a stacked offense. All three of those comments sort of tie into the next thing I want to talk about. Let's say that Ken Dorsey does go to New York and the Buffalo Bills are in search of a new offensive coordinator. I want to run through the 2 people that we have confirmed talk to. I want to get your take and the people in the comments sections take on maybe what are some traits you'd like to see from our offensive coordinator. Our guy on Twitter at Brian Bim said, hey, I would love you guys to talk about maybe some traits that you want to see from your offensive coordinator. Talk about that a little bit and close out sort of this coaching staff talk with maybe some names, some actual names we would like to see. So let's start with T. Martin. T. Martin, Ravens passing game coordinator, wide receivers coach. He is confirmed to be interviewing with the Buffalo Bills for their offensive coordinator position. He obviously was a quarterback for Tennessee, won a national championship, has been mostly a college coach for a majority of his career. Ravens Twitter is losing their mind over losing this guy, so I don't know if that says anything about him. Ted Wynn comes in and says, and he's a noted sort of film analyst on Twitter. He says, that T. Martin is credited with bringing in a lot of ideas to the Ravens passing attack. At one point this season, they were the most explosive passing team in the league. It was a very brief stint there, a couple of weeks there. Eric Turner has mentioned he's got a college-heavy RPO background. He's played the quarterback position. He's a quarterback guru. He trains guys in the offseason. He's been a position coach. He's been an assistant head coach. When he was in college, he was a top ace recruiter. Everyone wanted him to sort of come in and be the assistant head coach. But his one stint as a play caller at USC ended up at 5-7 and him getting terminated. So not really an extensive array of play calling acumen and play calling experience to go for with T. Martin. What are your thoughts on T. Martin here?
I like T. Martin. I think he could bring some new ideas to the building, like we said. Like one of the commenters said, Randy says T. Martin didn't pay him, he never could. Yes, but I would envision T. Martin maybe as more of like a quarterbacks coach or like a passing game coordinator type than a full fledged OC, at least for the state the Bills are in now. To me, I see T. Martin as an offensive coordinator fit for maybe a team that's maybe going through a rebuild or thinking that they're going to be on the upswing more so than established sort of like potent offense like the Bills have with Josh Allen. And I'm not trying to take away from T. Martin because I actually think I like him as a coach and I think he has a good future, but I don't know if it's maybe a little too early for him to be at the helm of this offense and calling plays. And you could say the same about Ken Dorsey, honestly, right? Like
100%. Yep.
you could say the same exact thing. So um, that's why I actually probably lean towards uh, not a guy like that. I probably lean towards more of a guy who has experience in play calling, and you'll see that I'll probably be in the minority in this when it comes to the traits that I'm looking for. That doesn't mean I want some old school guy or like whatever. I just want someone who's called plays before. So T. Martin for me, I think it's good due diligence by the Bills because I think he is a hot name as far as like what he's brought to the Ravens, as far as the the respect he's garnered from that fan base and sort of what he's been able to do with Lamar Jackson, how much credit he gets for that. Apparently, the Ravens feel like he should get a lot of credit for that. So there is something to be said about that, but I just feel like maybe maybe from a fit perspective and timing perspective, it doesn't make the most sense for the Bills to go that route.
Yeah, and then the other name that they interviewed today was, or at least they are going to interview, I don't know if they actually interviewed him today, is Edgar Bennett, the Oakland wide receivers coach. One of my favorite players from the late 90s and those Green Bay Super Bowl teams is the running back. Always loved Edgar Bennett. He was actually the offensive coordinator, and though he has coached with John Gruden the last couple of years as the wide receivers coach, he came up in Green Bay where he played, and he was very much a Mike McCarthy disciple. So what you're going to get from Edgar Bennett being a Mike McCarthy disciple is you're going to get a lot of 11 personnel, which the Buffalo Bills have traditionally run. They've been really effective at it. And you're going to get an up-tempo offense. According to Pro Football Focus, the Packers used the no-huddle offense 21% of their plays from 2014 to 2018 under Mike McCarthy. 2 of those seasons, Edgar Bennett, although not calling plays, was the offensive coordinator. That was the 3rd highest rate in the NFL over that span. So you're going to get up-tempo. You're going to get 11 personnel. And you're going to get a guy who, after, learning under and being groomed under and mentored by Mike McCarthy, spent 3 years under John Gruden, who then instills West Coast principles into him. Very multiple. John Gruden likes to use 12 personnel, 2 tight ends. John Gruden very much likes to utilize the fullback. John Gruden very much likes to utilize the screen game and a lot of different play action things. So Edgar Bennett, while growing up in that sort of Mike McCarthy tree, also got a little bit of grooming underneath John Gruden and a lot of those West Coast concepts. So I'm actually pretty intrigued by Edgar Bennett as a candidate, more so than T. Martin. I see T. Martin as more of a CEO type of guy who is like a leader of men or a mentor at a position. I don't see T. Martin as a play caller. I can envision Edgar Bennett as a play caller.
I can too. He was the offensive coordinator under Mike McCarthy for a couple of years there, like you mentioned. And I do like the fact that he's been under multiple styles of coaches from a principal's standpoint. I think Edgar Bennett intrigues me more so than T. Martin as well. If the Bills end up going that direction, it will be, I would say, be a minor surprise, but it wouldn't be something that I would be like I wouldn't be upset about it, right? And up tempo is something that intrigues me as well because I think the Bills have the horses to go that route if they want to, even more so than they do now. They do it occasionally now, not a ton, but they do it occasionally. That intrigues me. So I would not dismiss Edgar Bennett as a serious contender. But again, probably just a notch above T. Martin for me. Like I would still probably prefer someone a little bit more seasoned.
Pierre Martinez comes in and says Ruggs was a bust even before the accident happened. Not sure he's a good wide receiver coach either. Yeah, but Ruggs, I think, was coming around before that incident, to be honest with you. And even with that,
Yes.
Hunter Renfro made Zay Jones a respectable NFL receiver. Kudos to him for that. So, and Edgar Bennett is a guy who, when he was in Green Bay, coached running backs. He might have coached quarterbacks. I'd have to double check. He's coached wide receivers. I know he's coached running backs, and he's been an offensive coordinator, even though he didn't call the plays. So Edgar Bennett is a guy who shuffled through some of the position groups. He's coached multiple position groups, etc., not just wide receivers. And obviously he was a running back when he was a player. Let's get to traits then. So people in the comment section, let us know. Randy's already coming in with a trait that I really like. And he says, I do not want to see Josh in a West Coast offense. And that was on my list, is I don't want a guy who's heavy into the West Coast principles. And I believe it was our guy, Merck on Twitter, who might have said this. It also might have been Aaron Quinn. So I apologize for maybe not sourcing this correctly and sourcing this take properly, but a lot of smart dudes on Twitter. I forgot to bookmark it. It was either Merck or it was Aaron. But they talked about how Josh Allen's game very much revolves around taking some of those deep shots, rolling out, letting things develop down the football field. And that's very much not a part of what the West Coast offense is: timing, rhythm. And while you do want to incorporate some of that into your offense, you don't want it to be the basis of your offense when Josh Allen is your quarterback. The person on Twitter mentioned how he doesn't think that the marriage between Justin Herbert and Joe Lombardi, who had coached Drew Brees, was going very swimmingly, and there was a lot of bumps and bruises, and Justin Herbert wasn't being utilized correctly out there in Los Angeles. So that is one of the traits that I want to see. Is I don't want to see a guy who's like married to or obsessed with anyone's scheme in particular, especially that West Coast scheme.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right. I think that it wouldn't really maximize, I think, the output or the ceiling of one, our personnel, and two, Josh Allen, which is clearly the most important thing. Could he run a West Coast offense? Sure. But are you really going to get the most out of Josh Allen doing that? Probably not, right? I think that the other thing that we don't necessarily have, and maybe Devin Singletary can become that guy, is like you really need that running back who's kind of like pass catching is one of their like major contributions, right, to the offense. And although Singletary did improve on that, like I don't envision him as that guy, that sort of West Coast running back that fits into that offense that uses the running back so heavily in the passing game. So yeah, I would have to agree with you there. That's not something I had considered before tonight, but I do, now that you mentioned it, I would probably lean with you on that.
And we got it was Pierre says he just wants someone who will recognize Gabriel Davis as a wide receiver number 2. McGarvio 2 coming in saying, with McDermott having a defensive background, I want someone with experience being an offensive coordinator, someone that's confident in his offense rather than someone that's trying to figure out his foundation as an OC. And that sounds like something that you're leaning to, Dave. So maybe speak on that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, look, philosophies. Okay. So philosophies, I'm looking for traits. I'm looking for, like, take schematics out of the equation for just a second, but just traits. I want a coordinator who is going to adapt to his personnel, right? I want a coordinator who's not going to be necessarily set in the ways that they have done things in the past, even though they may be experienced and they may have leaned one way in their past. I want someone who's going to look at the personnel they have and figure out the best way to use that personnel. So that someone who's adaptable and someone who can maximize the talent on the roster that he has in front of him, right? That's number one. Number 2, I want someone who is going to be not intimidated, right, in big games. I want someone who's going to be confident in their play calling. I want someone who's going to trust that what they're doing is going to be the right way to do things. And now it may not always result in the best outcome. It happens to everybody, but I want someone who's confident. I want someone who in big games I want someone in big games who has the balls to call something creative, who has the balls to call, an aggressive game plan. And so as I start thinking about that, I'm like, okay, aggressiveness, creativeness, not being intimidated in big moments, not coaching scared, and then being able to adapt to your personnel. That to me culminates in sort of the traits that I'm looking for in the next offensive coordinator. And then someone with play calling experience to me is just, is a bonus on top of that. Right. So that's kind of my three things I'm looking for.
Yeah, I mean, Dawn comes in and she says that's why I like the idea of a first-time coordinator, because they are more open-minded and they are willing to take risks. So that's a good point by Dawn. Your boy, we're going to get to your comment next because I think it perfectly sort of segues into the next part here. But before we do, I thought our guy Hansel on Twitter made a great point from the Process on Tap podcast. He said he wants an offensive coordinator with a small ego. Someone who's not coming in and trying to force his scheme upon the players, as you mentioned, adaptability, a guy who's going to be coming and willing to fit the scheme to the personnel that is there in Buffalo. You've seen plenty of coaches come in like the Chip Kellys of the world or the Josh McDaniels of the world, and they come in and they're like, well, we need to get rid of this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. Well, no, come in and adapt what you got, because what you got is good. We were one of the top 5 offenses in the National Football League this year. Josh Allen's a perennial MVP the last 2 seasons. What you got is good. Make it work. Maybe come in and say, hey, I really like this free agent, or hey, I really like this guy in the draft. But don't come in here and say, this guy's got to go, this guy's got to go. We need to switch up this, and this. Like, that's not going to fly. You need to have someone who has a small ego, who puts the team first, not his future career aspirations first, a guy who is not his way or the highway. And I trust Sean McDermott to make a hire and to hire a guy who's not like that. And, just getting nitpicky here, Nate Geary mentioned this on Twitter. He would like a guy who maybe is a little more nuanced in the screen game, the yards after catch game, because that's something that's missing from the Buffalo offense. So again, it's just a bonus because the Buffalo offense has been super effective, but you can add some new wrinkles and find a guy who maybe has some wrinkles in the yards after catch, or some experience drawing up plays and drawing up a scheme that delivers more yards after catch, that delivers more screens. We saw the Bengals have a lot of success with that against the Kansas City Chiefs, that screen game. And they've had a lot of success in the playoffs in general using that screen game. So maybe someone who can dial up some of those screens. So let's get to your boy Lettuce super chat here. And then I know we have one by chance as well. Your boy Lettuce says, I agree. Any offensive coordinator says we are now this and this prescribed scheme that isn't Joshy is kind of disqualified. And he is a fan, or maybe he's not a fan of, but he just wants your opinion on Anthony Lynn, who I didn't mind him when he was the offensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills during the last season of Rex Ryan. I thought he was decently creative, at least in the run game. What are your thoughts on Anthony Lynn, who was pretty much fired by Dan Campbell after his stint in Detroit this season?
I think Anthony Lynn's a classic case of great as a position coach or a coordinator, didn't cut it as a head coach, didn't really thrive in big game moments when it came to management decisions, which we saw happen with the Chargers, and kind of been a trait of McDermott as well, right? So the one thing that I would be wary of Anthony Lynn is, getting back to the traits I was talking about, is how is he going to handle big moments, right? When the game's on the line or you're in tough situations. I didn't really like how he handled that as a head coach. And while you get kind of masked a little bit from that, or buffered a little bit from that when you're a coordinator or a position coach, you still got to be able to call, the right play in the right time. So I'm not opposed to a guy like Anthony Lynn, but I do think, as far as experienced coordinators that are potentially available, he probably wouldn't necessarily be near the top of my list.
Got a couple more super chats. We got Brooke coming in. Always appreciate you, Brooke. She says, form the offense around what the quarterback does well. Couldn't agree with you more. I think that was part of the reason why we don't want someone who's like married to West Coast principles, the timing, the short routes. We want someone who's willing to let Josh push the ball down the field. I think Edgar Bennett, despite the fact that he's been in a system with West Coast principles, I really like the Raiders play action and their use of play action. And I think that's something that would really intrigue me about bringing into the Bills offense. But what concerns me is that's one little thing that I want to bring to the Bills. That's a wrinkle I want to add to the offense. I don't want that to be the offense. And that would be my concern with Edgar Bennett, but he does have that experience again under Mike McCarthy. So this is all about what Sean McDermott hears in the room, what Brandon Beane hears in the room, what really intrigues them. So totally with you there, Brooke. By chance comes in with he's gone out of left field with this name. I've seen a couple people in the comment section mentioned the chin, Bill O'Brien, but he's coming in. He says, Holman Wiggins is the guy for me, assistant offensive coordinator and wide receiver coach for Alabama. So going back to that Alabama tree, listen, I can't comment because I don't know too much about Holman Wiggins' background. I will just know that he didn't even call plays in college. So that would definitely be a little of left field there. Randy Harbin comes in and says, speaking of left field, what about Dino Babers? I love me the veer and shoot offense. Don't get me wrong. I would like it in small increments. And I don't know if I would trust a guy like Dino Babers to run my entire offense, especially at the pro level. And I don't believe he's ever coached at the pro level. And Randy also might have been sarcastic in saying that because Randy is known for some sarcastic comments every once in a while. Cliff Mail comes in and says, my choice would be someone who is a mesh with Josh personality wise. The play call style will work itself out. And yeah, when you say personality wise, I can't remember where I heard this story, but someone was just like, man, Josh Allen just lives and breathes football, like almost every single second of this dude's day. Obviously, I think he does a good job of separating himself from the game when he needs to. Obviously, he enjoys time with his family and his girlfriend. He's out in Pebble Beach right now playing some golf. So I think he does have like a decent balance, but at the same time, like this is a dude who just like when it's football season, like that's his life, man. And it's not like, it's just like this dude is wired to go out there and devote most of his time to being successful. So finding an offensive coordinator who's willing to put in that similar time is really important as well. And it's just so easy for me to sit here and say things like that, right? Like I don't have kids, like people have kids, people have families, like they can't. So to find a guy who's wired the right way, to find a guy who has a family who's supportive of him being wired that way. I think Brian Daboll made a couple of comments like that during his opening press conference. I had no idea he had 6 kids. Like, holy shit. But just finding a guy who's wired like Josh Allen and is willing to put in that work like Josh Allen is super important as well. I think Brian Daboll and Josh Allen were both cut from the same cloth. I really, really do. And I think that's why that marriage between those two was the way it was. And listen, I understand that Josh had to take the onus upon himself, but I think a lot of that development of Josh Allen should be credited to Brian Daboll. And I think we're going to miss him. There are some people who aren't going to miss him. I think you should. I think he was a very good offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. Walter Scales coming in with the super chat. I always appreciate you, Walter. Says Jim Caldwell during his time as an OC and a head coach led some very potent passing offenses. Joe Flacco's Super Bowl run being the highlight. 2 Super Bowls as an offensive coordinator. He's on my list. Jim Caldwell is on my list. You know what intrigues me the most about Jim Caldwell is when he was interviewing for that job in New York, there were reports coming out that he sat down with the ownership of Chicago. And this was before they hired Ryan Poles as their general manager. So I'm not sure if Ryan Poles was on this meeting. And something tells me it probably isn't that hard to impress the McCoskeys, who are the owners of the Bears. But Jim Caldwell apparently blew them away with, he came in, he sat down, he said, listen, you have a quarterback here in Justin Fields. Here's my plan for how to develop him. Here's my plan to play to his strengths and to be successful. And apparently he had like a really good plan for Justin Fields. Josh Allen is a similar-ish quarterback. So if Jim Caldwell had been spending that time and building an offense that he thought could suit a Justin Fields, he could easily bring that in and plug that in and utilize a lot of those concepts with a guy like Josh Allen. So Jim Caldwell, now that we're getting to offensive coordinators we'd like to see, high on that list.
Jim Caldwell's high on my list too. Obviously has the experience, did things in Detroit, which looking back in hindsight are even more impressive now, in my opinion. Took them to the playoffs 2 times for a franchise that had been downtrodden for years and are now back to being downtrodden. Obviously had all those years with Peyton Manning with the Colts under Tony Dungy. Look, Jim Caldwell is a guy that's definitely on my list. And you're going to see that as like a theme for the guys that I have on my lists, like former head coaches, former very reputable offensive minds in this league, guys who've had success as coordinators and head coaches. So Jim Caldwell's on my list, as is this next guy that your boy Lettuce mentioned. Says if we can land Peterson, I think that will be for the best.
RPO guy.
And as we get to this next, name, Doug Peterson is a guy that's on my list as well. Some of the things that I mentioned traits wise, I don't think Doug Peterson is scared to make a big play call in a big game. They called Philly. He was the head coach in the Super Bowl against the mighty Patriots. And look, that's just one example, but he is a guy to me that would not be intimidated as a play caller. He's a Super Bowl winning head coach. How often do you find a guy like that is available? And I know he kind of ran his course there in 2020, got fired after Wentz had that terrible season in 2020. But when he's the head coach of the Eagles, 16th ranked offense, 3rd ranked offense, 18th, 12th. So he was pretty much a top half of the NFL offense until that last season with Wentz when he stunk. And he's obviously comfortable in big games. And so he's definitely
Philly special, baby.
Yeah. So he's definitely him and Caldwell to me certainly should be on a short list because of those reasons. So
and the thing about Doug Peterson too is it's an absolute shite show what's going on in Jacksonville right now. It looked like they were closing in on Byron Leftwich. But Byron Leftwich said, I don't want to be here. If Trent Baalke is going to be the GM, I want you to hire Adrian Wilson. And Shad Khan should have just said yes and pulled the trigger on both gentlemen.
Could Byron Leftwich be an option for the Bills?
He did not. He did not. Well, there is an option on that Tampa Bay coaching staff that I'm going to get to in a little bit. It now, who knows? Maybe if Tom Brady does hang it up, maybe Bruce Arians hangs it up and Byron Leftwich can take over in Tampa Bay. He's interviewing in New Orleans, and Jacksonville now is sort of scrambling. They wanted to talk to Kevin O'Connell. The NFL told them no. Shad Khan seems intent on keeping Trent Baalke. And what have they done? They're bringing in Doug Peterson for a second interview. So it could be that Doug Peterson ends up being, to me, it's a really good settle for them. I think he'd be good for Trevor Lawrence. I would have gone with more of a CEO hire in Jacksonville because I think Urban Meyer really and Doug Marrone both just completely gutted that franchise of any semblance of culture.
Byron Leftwich would be so good there, man.
Yeah,
I really do believe that.
I would go for a more of a culture builder. I'm not saying Doug Peterson isn't a culture builder because obviously he turned that Philly team around really quickly after Chip Kelly. But in terms of culture-wise, I think Doug Peterson would be uninspiring. In terms of helping Trevor Lawrence and being a good offensive play caller, I think that Doug Peterson would be a good hire there. So Doug Peterson might not be on the table there. You mentioned Tampa Bay. Harold Goodwin is a guy who interviewed to be the Buffalo Bills head coach, I believe either when Chan Gailey interviewed or when Sean McDermott interviewed, one of those times. Harold Goodwin has been Bruce Arians' right-hand man for a very, very long time. He's obviously an older guy. He's never really had a chance to call plays. He was the offensive coordinator in Arizona. He has since become an assistant just there in Tampa Bay. Harold Goodwin is a guy that I would consider giving a call to and asking him, coming from that Bruce Arians system. I talk all the time about how I really respect that Tampa Bay system and how they balance taking shots with pulling out 12 personnel and even 3 tight ends and utilizing the play action and things like that. So a guy like Harold Goodwin in that Bruce Arians system is something that I wouldn't mind as well. That's sort of a name out of left field, I know, but and probably a name the Buffalo Bills aren't even considering, but I would like a Harold Goodwin type.
I hadn't considered him, but it wouldn't be, no, I don't think it would be the worst. At least give him a call, see what's going on. But it's funny. We start going through these names, right? And we start realizing there's a lot more names out there than maybe you even realize that could be options, right? People have mentioned Pep Hamilton. He was on my list as well. I know
Joe
you
Brady.
like Todd. I know you like Todd Monken. Kevin O'Connell's getting a lot of run. He's getting interviews for Vikings head coaching position.
Houston.
He's a Sean McVay coaching tree guy. And has very, although you wouldn't think of it, he does have a little bit of experience as a play caller. He took over for Jay Gruden
in
when
Washington.
Jay Gruden got fired, and McVay has let him call plays during the preseason in his time with the Rams. So I know he would be like the young up and comer type if you're looking for that type of guy.
He would be here for about 1 year.
Yeah, he would be.
And that shouldn't deter you. That shouldn't deter anyone from. But that's the thing. Like, he's technically an offensive coordinator in Los Angeles, but calling plays is technically a promotion, right? So
Correct.
the Rams couldn't block it. That's why also a name we've seen mentioned here is Mike McDaniel from San Francisco. Also Slowick from San Francisco is another name. So there are a lot of, and that's the thing, right? When you have these offensive head coaches who sort of bring in these mentees, they don't want to give up the play calling, at least when it matters. You know, you mentioned Sean McVay gave it up in the preseason, et cetera. So you have these guys who might be now looking like we're seeing a dawn of a new age in the National Football League. What was it? A guy who was on my list, Luke Getsy from Green Bay, quarterbacks coach, right? He'll just become the offensive coordinator when Nate Hackett leaves. Well, Matt LaFleur is not giving up play calling. So what does Luke Getsy do? He goes and interviews in Chicago, and he's now the offensive coordinator in Chicago. You can't block that stuff anymore if they're getting promotions.
Right.
You're seeing Pep Hamilton interview around. You're seeing all these other guys interviewing around. It's the dawn of a new age in the National Football League, and you're going to start to see guys who have never called plays before get a chance to call plays, and I'm excited for it, right? Like less of these retreads, more of these new guys who get a chance to prove themselves. But at the end of the day, you also know that you have Josh Allen in his prime. You look for that. You look for that comfortability, right? You look to be comfortable. And yeah, Mike McDaniel winded up as the head coach in Miami as well. So there's a chance for that.
There's another guy who's going to probably become available who Bills fans probably maybe wouldn't like because there will be some element of West Coast, but Greg Olsen is going to likely be out in Vegas. And he did some nice things with the Raiders this year when he took over play calling when John Gruden got fired.
That could also be a situation where we mentioned like Mike Shula could come out and be the quarterback's coach under Ken Dorsey. You could see a situation where Greg Olsen is the quarterback's coach under Edgar Bennett.
And he was the quarterback's coach for the Rams when one of Jared Goff's best seasons in 2017. So, and a guy with a ton of experience. Now, is he going to be willing to take that kind of job? You never know, right? He's been quarterback's coach. He's been assistant head coach. He's been offensive coordinator. You don't know what guys like that are willing to do. And you don't know with a guy like Greg Olsen, who just had a pretty good finish to the season with the Raiders, Derek Carr, one of Derek Carr's best seasons. Raiders, by the way, had a better passing offense statistically than the Bills this year. You don't know what he might be willing to come in and be a quarterback's coach for Josh Allen, a guy with a ton of experience and years under his belt. So, yeah.
Speaking of experience, a name I had listed to like way down my list would be Dirk Cotter. He's retired, or he's at least stepped away, but he's always had some pretty decent offenses that I've enjoyed. A couple of coach Joe Brady, we haven't mentioned yet, is a guy who is looking to get back into the National Football League. He didn't take any of these college jobs that he probably could have taken. He definitely wants to get back into the National Football League. So, I mean, it's worth hearing what he has to say. I think at least in an interview setting. A couple of up and coming assistants that we missed: Marcus Brady from Indianapolis, their offensive coordinator who doesn't call plays. Frank Reich does, and Mike Kafka of the Kansas City Chiefs.
Let me ask you this: who would be your top three? Like we mentioned so many names. Who would be your top three that you would like to see?
Number one, Todd Monken. Number two, Jim Caldwell. And like I said, I'm a pussy. Number three, Doug Peterson.
See, my top three are not necessarily in any particular order, but my top three are Pep Hamilton, Peterson, and Caldwell. Like in any order you want to put them. Those are
I like
my
Pep.
top three.
I like Pep.
Yeah,
he did really good with in spurts. There's only so much you can ask for that Houston team with how awful they were.
Well, that's what I put in my notes. Like he got the most as a quarterback's coach and assistant OC with Houston. He got a lot out of Davis Mills. Those years with Andrew Luck where they had like no offensive line protecting him. I mean, they didn't care. They were airing it out. And Andrew Luck, as an athlete, is kind of like a stouter, maybe not quite as athletic Josh Allen, right? Like he could run. He could actually run a little bit, but he wasn't.
He had Cardell in DC. Your boy Lettuce comes in and says, "Does Eric Bieniemy?" I'm pretty sure Eric Bieniemy calls the plays in Kansas City. By the way, like he's the guy talking into the headset. So unless he's talking to the upstairs, I'm pretty sure Eric Bieniemy is the one who calls the plays in Kansas City. And I was just going to get to that. I was trying to talk myself into a situation where Eric Bieniemy interviews for all these head coaching jobs and he just keeps hitting wall after wall after wall. Maybe at one point Eric Bieniemy goes to Kansas City and is like, I want out so I can go somewhere else and actually prove that I'm not a byproduct of Andy Reid. And in that case, like Mike Kafka would elevate in Kansas City and Eric Bieniemy would become a free agent, and then
Mhm.
the stars would align and he would come to Buffalo. But there's no way in fucking hell Kansas City is going to let Eric Bieniemy come coach Josh Allen again and go up against Patrick Mahomes every year. He'd have to go to like the NFC or something. So, I want to try to convince myself into that situation, but it's just never going to happen. Clifford Mail comes in. May you're going to have to spell the pronunciation for me. I apologize. Mail. Can you do it?
Mail.
There we go.
Mail.
I don't know why I'm struggling with this. He said anyone in the Arians tree he'd listen to for sure. I love that Bruce Arians offense. We're going to get into it a little bit later when we talk about tight ends in the Senior Bowl, and I think we're just about there at this point, ladies and gentlemen. I think we've gone through every possible offensive.
Yeah, we could have made this its own show.
But it is Senior Bowl week, ladies and gentlemen. It's Senior
Yes.
Bowl week, and we are draft nerds, so we definitely want to make sure that we get in our Senior Bowl preview. We are starting today with the offense, and we are talking about prospects that we want to see this week up close in Mobile. We got Russ in Mobile this week, Russ Brown from Cover One. He is on location at the practices, talking to scouts. He already was talking to a bunch of scouts this morning, wrote up an article for Cover One. So go check that out
already too.
Did a pod already. Go check that out on the Cover One podcasting network. Russ is all over the place. We're going to have him on the show next Monday to break everything down that happened in Mobile. I'm going to be asking him like, hey, where were the Bill scouts? Like what prospects were they honing in on? What guys were they keeping their eyes on and all those good stuff. So we want to get a nice little position by position Senior Bowl preview in. We're going to start with offense, and we can make quick work of this one, but I do want to at least start with the quarterbacks, because the Buffalo Bills don't have any quarterbacks outside of Josh Allen currently on the roster. Mitch Trubisky is a UFA. Jake Fromm is with Joe Shane and Brian Daboll in New York. Have fun. And Davis Webb was not signed to a futures deal. Some rumors and rumblings he could end up in New York with the Giants, either as a player or on the coaching staff. He could make his way back to Buffalo as a player or on the coaching staff, but nothing set in stone yet for Davis Webb. So Josh Allen, the only quarterback on the roster. Brandon Beane mentioned free agency in the draft. We're going to have to find a backup somewhere. The shots that our quarterback takes, we need a solid backup quarterback. But you're not going to be able to find a Mitch Trubisky every year, a guy you can pay pennies on the dollar to come in and be a solid backup quarterback. So, you could look at a situation like Ryan Fitzpatrick, or you could maybe try to go and find your next Mitch Trubisky. But if we get through free agency and we get to the draft and we haven't found a Mitch Trubisky, and the Buffalo Bills are sort of stuck, like maybe they bring Matt Barkley back, or, they sign some, veteran quarterback, that doesn't really inspire much hope if Josh Allen gets hurt. What round are you willing to consider a quarterback in this draft? Starting what round to go out and maybe get a toolsy backup that maybe would give us a shot if Josh Allen were to, knock on wood, get hurt?
I mean, day 3. That's where I'm at.
But there's a difference between late and early day 3.
Okay, I'd say round 5.
I'm willing to say I'd pull the trigger at round 4.
I could maybe get behind round 4. I also don't necessarily think the door is completely closed on Mitch Trubisky coming back to the Bills, for whatever that's worth. I do think that if we, like you mentioned earlier, if Davis Webb does go to follow Brian Daboll, the backup, and become the backup quarterback to Daniel Jones in New York, Mitch Trubisky may be back with the Bills for another year. We'll see. But in any case, round 4, it really depends, man. I mean, I think it depends on what kind of ground we cover in free agency. If we feel like we've covered a decent amount of ground in free agency, we've re-signed some of our own, right? And quarterback is really the one thing that maybe didn't work out for us in free agency because we decided to pursue elsewhere. Like maybe we decided to, bring back McKenzie, and, we tendered Ryan Bates, and maybe we made maybe we signed an edge rusher or something. And it's like, okay, quarterback's the one thing out there. I could maybe see round 4. But is it really going to make that much of a difference? Round 4, round 5? I mean,
True. Well,
I don't know.
And that's the thing with this year's draft class. So let me quickly go through and let me talk about who is going to be there in Mobile. On the national team, which is the Jets, it's Desmond Ridder from Cincinnati, Kenny Pickett from Pittsburgh, Carson Strong from Nevada. On the American team, which is the Lions, it's Sam Howell from North Carolina, It's Malik
Boo.
Willis from Liberty, and it is Bailey Zappi from Western Kentucky. So to me, it's an uninspiring quarterback class from top to
Very
bottom.
much.
I shouldn't say from top to bottom because there are some quarterbacks that I like in this class, and most of them aren't even at the Senior Bowl or even the Shrine Bowl. I watched the NFLPA Bowl, and there was a couple of quarterbacks that I really liked in the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl, but those are like 6th, 7th, UDFA type of guys, priority free agents. But I don't know, man. I've gotten a taste of Josh Allen, right? We've gotten that taste of this physical freak quarterback with a rocket arm, and I don't want to go back to. Somebody mentioned Bailey Zapp in the comment section. My comp for him is Case Keenum, and that's not good enough for me anymore, man. I've had the taste.
No.
I've had the taste.
I mean, to me, if you're really looking to try to get, you need to look at another guy playing in this game, and that's Carson Strong, in my opinion. That would be,
and he's probably
but
because
again,
of his intangibles going to rise, like 2nd, 3rd round pick.
exactly. He's going to be a day 1 or day 2, and so for me, Carson Strong is the guy that if you're really trying to find traits that kind of align with Josh Allen as far as arm strength, size, maybe not necessarily the athleticism, but playing in a vertical type passing offense, he would be the guy. But again, you're talking now we're probably creeping into day 2 for him if you want to take him. So the rest of the class is not doing much for me.
And he's not very mobile, Carson Strong.
Exactly.
I'll tell you what, listen, people are going to give me a hard time over this, but when all the musical chairs at quarterback, are over with, and if the one guy left standing is Malik Willis out of Liberty, he's there at the end of the 3rd round. I might consider it. I love him. I love me some Malik Willis. I think he's got all the tools. I'm just a big fan. He probably won't be there. I'm just talking on my ass at this point, but not the 2nd round. I'm not the 2nd round. It's too high for me. We have way too
that RPO experience, which is nice.
That 3rd round, I'd be so tempted. I would be tempted. Someone mentions Jacob Eason. My guess is he's going to be on the Seahawks roster at least through training camp. So I look at
sign Mitch Trubisky back.
Just let's get Mitch back. I like Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Anyone who's seen any of my mock drafts know I'm a huge fan of DTR. But I watched that NFLPA Bowl, and I'm really Akil Glass from Alabama A&M is really growing on me, and Cole Kelly from Southeastern Louisiana are really growing on me. So go back and give those 2 guys a look. Fairly mobile guys, big arms, guys you can get in the 6th, 7th round, who I think could come in and really, be good backups. I look at Tyler Huntley as sort of the epitome of what I'm looking for in a quarterback that I draft in this class. A guy with legs, a guy with an arm. Give him a chance. Legs and an arm give you a chance, in my opinion. The rest you try to develop or you hope develops. Give me an arm. Give me some legs. Give me some work ethic.
What do you think the market's going to be for Tyler Huntley this offseason?
Is he a free agent?
Yeah.
I don't think he's a free agent.
I'm pretty sure he is. Yeah.
I think he might. I don't think he's a free agent.
I'm going to fact check myself right now.
I don't think he's a free agent.
I think he is.
But while you are fact checking yourself, let's transition now from and a lot of people are mentioning like Drew Lock, Sam Darnold, all these different things.
He signed a 1-year contract with the Ravens.
Ooh.
Sorry, he's an exclusive rights free agent.
Yeah, he's back in Baltimore.
Yep.
There, because I see things on Twitter like Ravens fans are like, well, let's trade Lamar. Anyway, running back, much bigger need for the Buffalo Bills going through the Senior Bowl roster here. The Jets and the national team have Jerome Ford, Randy Hardman approved. My boy, Tyler Batty from Missouri, Hassan Haskins from Michigan, Rashad White from Arizona State, and Abram Smith from Baylor. The American team, the Lions, have Brian Robinson Jr. from Alabama, Devontae Price from Florida International. A lot of people's favorite right now, James Cook out of Georgia, and Dameon Pierce out of Florida. Before we get into specific players playing in the Senior Bowl, and feel free to let us know who you are looking forward to most seeing in the Senior Bowl in the comment section here. Jones and Breida, free agents. We let Antonio Williams walk to the Giants. The Bills seem poised to make a significant move at running back, at least try to find a 1B to Devin Singletary's 1A. They could end up settling, right, for a late round guy who has traits or a veteran if the board doesn't fall their way. But to me, it looks like the middle rounds are open for the Buffalo Bills to make yet again another investment in the running back position. What are you looking for in the running back position?
That's a great question. And I kind of go back and forth on this because I don't necessarily want to replace Devin Singletary, but I want someone maybe who's a better complement to Devin Singletary than what Zach Moss is. I do feel like, in some regards, Devin Singletary and Zach Moss are kind of redundant to each other, especially with Devin Singletary's improved pass catching this year. And his ability, we saw late in the year, to have a nose for the end zone down at the goal line. I mean, and his vision is just so much better than what Zach Moss's was this year, with Zach Moss running into piles all year. So I find their traits to be, at least in my mind, a little redundant. So I wouldn't mind seeing the Bills go after a guy who is really more of a, I guess, like an off tackle kind of speed, like off the edge type of runner. And this is what I wanted to ask you about a couple guys, because it's really easy to fall in love with James Cook, right? Because he's like mini Dalvin. Obviously, he's his brother. You watch how he runs. He runs very similar. Super great fit in that sort of zone, wide, zone sort of running game, like the Kyle Shanahan style. Would he be a fit for the Bills? And would he add an element of playmaking ability that maybe we don't have, that we were hoping to get from a Matt Breida, but we didn't, because Matt Breida can get tackled by the wind. So James Cook gives you a little more sturdiness, I think. So he is the type of guy I'm looking for, I guess, if that's to answer your question.
I think that James Cook embodies a lot of what the Buffalo Bills want. A couple of people have said, I want size and speed. We call that an all-purpose back, right? Like, we call that someone who's got all. And if there was there, in my opinion, is one all-purpose back in this draft. His name is Breece Hall from Iowa State. We're going to get to that in a second. But I think if you poll most Bills fans, what they're looking for is someone to complement Motor, because Motor did come on towards the end of last year. That would mean a guy with the trait of speed. That would mean a guy who could be active as a wide receiver. He can be active as a pass blocker, sort of a scat type that can play off of Devin Singletary and isn't so similar to Devin Singletary like Zach Moss. Like, I'm looking at names like Devontae Price, Brian Robinson Jr., Dameon Pierce, Hassan Haskins, Abram Smith, right? Some of these guys who are at the Senior Bowl, they're all good running backs. I like them as running backs. I have no interest in them to become the next, Buffalo Bill, because I'm sitting there. I'm like, well, I'd rather just see how Zach Moss develops going into year 3, because that's what those guys represent to me, a Zach Moss type. I'm looking for something different, right? I think Jerome Ford late has some all-purpose ability to him, so I'm going to call Jerome Ford an exception. But I look at my number one with a bullet is a guy who's not the Senior Bowl. That's Breece Hall.
Yes,
someone asked, where do you think he's projected? I go back and forth between comping him to Jonathan Taylor and Joe Mixon, as Randy Hardman originally comped him. And I don't understand that's lofty. I'm not saying he's Jonathan Taylor. I'm not saying he's Joe Mixon. I'm saying I feel like that's the type of ability he brings to your offense if he's utilized correctly. He's got to come into the right situation. But Breece Hall at 6'1", 225, probably going to run a 4.440. And once he does clock that 4.440 with the broken tackle rate that he has, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up at the end of the first round, right around where the Buffalo Bills draft at 25. He's my 1A, right? But also the Buffalo Bills need a corner. The Buffalo Bills need a defensive end. They need a defensive tackle. There are bigger needs that the Buffalo Bills need at pick number 25, possibly even in the second round. So my 1B is Tyler Batty from Missouri. My comp for Tyler Batty, who's going to be at the Senior Bowl, I want everybody to make sure that they are paying attention when Tyler Batty is on the field. My comp for him is Austin Eckler. short, compact, muscular, vision, contact balance, speed, really good as a wide receiver, can be used in the return game. Austin Eckler can just be used, not Austin Eckler, Tyler Batty can just be used in so many of the ways that Austin Eckler is utilized. And if you see Tyler Batty, that dude is compact. He is a big boy, and he can still run very fast despite his diminutive height stature.
He
He's
reminded me he
he's
reminded me a
built.
little bit of a combination between he reminded me of a combination of Eckler and Clyde Edwards-Helaire is kind of
Mhm.
how it's kind of like the hybrid combination I made in my head of him.
Yeah.
I did want to ask you about one guy in particular that you're
Mhm.
probably more familiar with, and I was struggling when I was trying to really watch him and really I was like, is he fast or is he not fast? Can
Mm.
and this is the guy in your backyard, and that's Rashad White.
He's not
I
fast.
wanted to and that's what my eyes saw, right? But
Mhm.
then I'm also seeing like, well, he looks pretty smooth, and
Very smooth.
it looks like he has very good vision. But then I'm
He's
like, then
high.
I'm just getting back to Devin Singletary
He's
again.
high. He's high cut. He's got long legs, which makes him a strider, which makes him seem a little faster than he is. I wouldn't mind Rashad White in the 6th round, right? Like that's the fallback. Rashad White is a fallback.
Yeah,
All right. Well, Tyler Batty went before we picked. Brees Hall went before we picked. Jerome Ford went before we picked. James Cook went before we picked. We're sitting in the 6th round. Okay, Rashad White can come in and sort of be the number 3 running back like Matt Breida, and maybe push for snaps with a guy. I mean, 6'1", 220 pounds or so, very high
Did,
cut, uptight runner, like upright runner. So a little bit different from some of these lower guys who like to get low and get compact. It's just a different type of dude, but he was super effective in the Pac-12. Long strider, good vision, good contact balance, and even though he's not a 4-3 guy, a 4-4 guy, he still does have an ability to sort of break away from guys. So I don't hate Rashad White. He's day 3 for me as
mhm.
compared to some of these other guys like James Cook. I was having a conversation with Rev Rhodes on Twitter. He can do things that Kamara does. I agree. I don't think he is Kamara, but he can do things that Kamara does in terms of splitting out like a wide receiver and being used. Brother of Dalvin Cook. That gives you an idea of what kind of, athletics and genes that boy comes from. So I love James Cook. And for me, it's 1A, Brees Hall, 1B, Tyler Batty, 1C, James Cook. So
Yep,
all eyes on Batty and Cook at the Senior Bowl
definitely.
with Jerome Ford and Rashad White as my 2 sort of backup plans. So it'll be really interesting. I like Hassan Haskins, but very Devin Singletary like to me. Devontae Price is interesting. I'll have to see what he clocks at or what his speed is at. He's a bigger guy. Brian Robinson, I get the appeal, very Zach Moss-ish to me. Like that's why he kind of just like, all right, we got Zach Moss. Why not just try another Zach Moss? Same with
I
Dameon
mean,
Pierce. So
Haskins to me would have been a guy at least initially that have been like, okay, well, Devin Singletary wasn't effective at maybe wasn't effective at the goal line. You look at a guy like Haskins, but then Devin Singletary got more effective at the goal line, and to me, it makes a guy like Hassan Haskins like not needed, right? Like he's got a great nose for the end zone when he's down at the goal line. He's gonna get if the play is designed to get you 3 yards, he's gonna get you 3 yards. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but he's not gonna be like a game breaking type guy, in my opinion. So again, doesn't seem like a good use of draft capital if it's me.
We got the wide receivers up next here. Obviously, Sanders is probably not coming back. He is also a UFA. Isaiah McKenzie is an unrestricted free agent. Jake Kumaro is an unrestricted free agent. Cole Beasley's future sort of up in the air. Bean says he wants him back. He expects him back. I don't know if I believe Brandon Bean wholeheartedly. I think that Beasley is in their plans for now, but I think that can change if a certain player falls to them in the draft in a certain spot, or if a guy becomes available in free agency and we can maybe get him for a certain price range. I think that Cole Beasley at the snap of a finger could go from in the Bills' future plans to not in the Bills' future plans. Spin 0481 comes in and says, we need boundary speed at wide receiver. What are you looking for, your traits in a wide receiver?
To be honest, I think this is the year where I probably am looking for the heir apparent to Cole Beasley. I don't necessarily feel like we have to necessarily go for a super boundary speed type guy, because I feel like Gabe Davis is probably going to be able to hold his own on the boundary. Now, if you want to get a guy like with really good boundary speed that maybe it could be a developmental guy, like a guy playing in the Senior Bowl, like Romeo Dubs. Like, okay, cool. Like that, I'm fine with that. But like to me, I think last year we spent a lot of time talking about slot and speed from the slot. And this year, I think with the fact that Cole Beasley's again probably 1 year closer to not being on this team, or maybe not even being on the team. I think he will be, but whatever. Sanders isn't there. You don't really know what you're going to get out of Isaiah Hodgins at this point. I think you really need, and you don't know if McKenzie's going to be back. So as it stands today, with McKenzie not being, with no guarantee McKenzie being back, Sanders going to be gone. Like, I really kind of want to look for a guy who's got some like quick twitch ability in the slot. That's kind of what I'm looking for this year. And if you happen to find a guy like you like as a boundary type guy with speed that maybe you would target in the later rounds, cool. Like, I'm not going to be opposed to that. I always think you should add at least one wide receiver if you're the Bills every year in the draft, with how much you rely on that position. So if you're talking about boundary speed, like the guy that I'm looking at in the Senior Bowl is Dubs. That would be the guy that I'm going to pay attention to from a boundary speed standpoint.
Yeah, we got a couple people coming in and mentioning Kyle Phillips from UCLA. Huge fan of Kyle Phillips. I think he is a very dynamic slot. He brings you speed in the slot. He brings you returnability in the slot. He's playing in the Shrine Bowl, so keep an eye on him on Thursday. I didn't get a chance to put much notes together for the Shrine Bowl. I've been collecting, odds and end notes here and there, and I didn't have a chance to sort of bring it all together and culminate it. So I don't have too much to say about the Shrine Bowl other than to say go follow Joe Marino and listen to the Draft Dudes podcast there at the Shrine Bowl. They're doing a great job. A bunch of different prospects. That Shrine Bowl, I'll tell you what, the NFLPA Bowl had some talent that I was watching this past weekend. Thursday night when we're doing the show, the Shrine Bowl will also be on. It'll be about an hour into the Shrine Bowl, playing in Vegas. There's some talent there too, man. There's a lot of talent at that Shrine Bowl. So that should be super interesting as well. But speaking for me, well, before we got that, we got Silas Whittle coming in talking about one of the guys who's at the Senior Bowl. Christian Watson, 6'5", 4.4 speed, and he high points the ball with his hands. He has special teams ability and allows Diggs or Davis to work in the slot. I'll tell you what, I still have a lot of work to do on Christian Watson coming from that smaller school, North Dakota State. He's been dealing with some injuries and stuff. He didn't play as many snaps as you would have liked to see this year, was in and out of the lineup. When I will say this about Christian Watson, and I know you're a fan, Silas. I will say the games that I did get a chance to see, and again, I want to preface this by saying I've seen like 1.5 games. I want to preface this by saying I only saw the broadcast angles. To me, what I saw from Christian Watson was that 4.4 speed did not show up on the field. I saw a tweet today that said, Cooper Kupp is the poster child for how NFL talent evaluators are going from the new sort of next gen stance, miles per hour, all those different things, and away from 40 times, because sometimes guys play faster than they clock, and sometimes guys play slower than they clock. Again, very, very minute sample size. I don't want to make a judgment on Christian Watson, because 3 weeks from now, once I've had a chance to dig in, I could be making a completely different statement. That 4.4 speed didn't show up when I saw him, but he was also in his first game back from an injury. So that also could have played a role in that as well. But Christian Watson is an intriguing prospect in this draft. So, and there's a ton of them. I mean, on the national squad, Khalil Shaker, Alec Pierce, Romeo Dubs, Christian Watson, Jahad Dotson, those guys are all, in my opinion, day 1-2 picks. Some of them might slip into early day 3. Then you have Bo Melton, who's more of an Isaiah McKenzie gadget type, who will go on day 2 at some point. On the American team, you got Calvin Austin, Reggie Roberson, Danny Gray, Jalen Tolbert. Those are all guys who I think have potential to go on day 2. Maybe early day 3. And then you got guys like Velus Jones, who is again more of an Isaiah McKenzie type, Dontario Drummond and Trey Turner, who I think are more day 3 guys. I got to do some more work on both of them, but there are some intriguing names.
I like Trey Turner
in Mobile. You like Trey Turner?
Yeah,
I still got to do some more work on him. I know Joe Marino's a fan, so
he's got contested catch. Trey Turner, like, strong hands, man. From what I watched, I mean, could play inside or out. and I really like the body. Like he reminded me of a guy that like his skills would translate to the NFL. Like I was impressed.
Yeah, it's to me what I'm looking for in a wide receiver. Number one, my trait, because I know a lot of people are talking about boundary guys. I made this word up, but I don't care. Slot dynamicism is what I'm looking for. Somebody who
There
can
you
do
go.
who can do what Cole Beasley and Isaiah McKenzie can do.
I think you and I are aligned on this one. Then.
And
Yeah.
I would love to find one guy who can play the slot full time, beat man, beat zone, can do the jet sweep stuff and return kicks. I'd love to find an all in one player, an all inclusive player. That would be the alpha. I'm going to call him the alpha slot. I want an alpha slot. That's what I want. I want to go out and find an alpha slot, but I know that could possibly be a pipe dream. But there are some dudes here that could be an alpha slot. Jahad Dotson could be an alpha slot. Calvin Austin III could be an alpha slot. Looking into the middle rounds, Danny Gray from SMU, I'm super high on at 6'3", 200 pounds as an alpha slot. Like there are dudes. Kyle Phillips could be an alpha slot. He's playing in the Shrine Bowl, not the Senior Bowl. There are some alpha slots on the board. And if you're looking for inside-outside versatility, Alec Pierce reminds me a lot of Donovan Peoples-Jones, where he's got that straight line speed. He's not the most developed route runner at this point in his career, but Alec Pierce is a guy who you can just put on the field, either in the slot or on the boundary, tell him to go run in a straight line, and he will challenge you deep. You obviously have Christian Watson, who people have mentioned. Reggie Roberson, I call him Stephon Diggs light, man. He gets off the line of scrimmage so quick. He's got a massive, massive injury history. So that's something that they're going to have to do work on. But I love Reggie Roberson. And then Jalen Tolbert, very Devontae Parker vibes from Jalen Tolbert as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, I haven't even gotten to Khalil Shaker yet, who's one of my favorites in this draft. Reminds me of Bobby Trees, Robert Woods. He's not a speed guy, right? He's not a speed guy, but he contested catch, body contortion, route running, very much run blocking, very much reminds me of Bobby Trees, Khalil Shaker. Yeah. So many receivers in the Senior Bowl that I just absolutely adore.
I mean, I'm already like it's bad. I'm already falling in love with Dotson.
So many.
And I know it's like I shouldn't, but I am. Mm-hmm. I will say there's a guy that like I think a lot of people like that maybe I'm not. I gotta watch more of him, but like my initial impressions of like Calvin Austin, I think a lot of people are gonna like him. But like I was kind of almost wanting to be more impressed than maybe I was. Maybe I had too high of expectations. I don't know. It just felt like
I talk him up quite a bit.
I mean, I felt like he was like when he was on the move when he caught the ball, he looked like really good to me. But I worried about his ability to catch the ball without momentum and then kind of make something happen and get a feel. Like that's the one thing that I was like, I'm not so sure, but I will reserve judgment. I will watch more of him, and I know he's fast. And I think getting him the ball while he's already on the move is the key to Calvin Austin.
One of these years, we got to get these Memphis. We got to get a Memphis guy. One of these years.
I liked him I like it when he catches the ball when he's already on the move. I worry about him catching the ball without momentum. And so we'll see. I will watch more of him, and I will be paying very close attention to Calvin Austin during the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, and John Y comes in and says, y'all do realize the draft is going to be deep at all positions. Great players will be available. Here's where I'm struggling this year, right? So with the wide receivers, and again, there's so many good receivers, and there's such just a dearth of receivers that some of these guys are going to drop, but who knows which ones are going to drop. And last year we had our laundry list of guys that we loved. The guy who ended up going to Tampa Bay and he's the kick and punt.
Jalen Darden.
Jalen Darden. He ended up going in the third round. We called that, by the way. We knew he wasn't going to be a late round pick, despite what most draft websites were telling you. Marcus Stevenson, we were all a fan of, and the Dax Milne, and we just had a laundry list of guys that we really liked late. And I'm struggling in this draft class. Like the one guy that I always want to go to late on the TDN simulator is Danny Gray. But I look at this guy, Danny Gray, and he says, he's 6'3", 205 pounds. He's going to clock a 4.4, very dynamic in the slot, has return ability, can also play the boundary. Like, Danny Gray is my Jahad Dotson, or not Jahad Dotson, Jalen Darden this year, where like everyone's saying he's going to be a 6th, 7th round pick. I think Danny Gray is going to go on day 2. Like, I really do think that a guy like Danny Gray is going to rise. So like, I'm just trying to look for guys like I know are going to be there late. Like I think Romeo Dubs slips. I think he falls down draft boards. But Bo Melton, Velas Jones, it's easy to fall in love with those guys because you know exactly what you're getting. You're getting Isaiah McKenzie. You're getting a guy who can be a dynamic kick and punt returner, a guy who can get the ball and make things happen with the ball in his hands, but also probably not a guy who's ever going to develop into anything more than that. I think Velas Jones is a guy who could develop into more than that. USC transfer at Tennessee, special teams player of the year in the SEC this year as a kick returner. Also made some plays once they started getting some good quarterback play at Tennessee. A guy like Velas Jones could be a real steal late on in that draft, but the guys that I really am falling in love with are the guys that are going within the first 4 rounds of the draft. What's one receiver outside of Jahan Dotson? Because that's the dead giveaway here. Outside of all of these Senior Bowl receivers, who are you most looking forward to seeing?
Outside of the Senior Bowl guys?
No. Outside of Jahan Dotson on the Senior Bowl list.
Dubs for me. I mean, Dubs and Austin probably are the two because I want to see what Austin can. I really want to see what Austin can make for himself without momentum, and I want to see if Dubs can actually. I want to see how he handles one-on-one because I think, to me, he's got the body you look for he's got that kind of like AJ Brown body. I'm not saying he's AJ Brown, but he's that 6'2", 200-pound dude. Like he's got the body to be like a top receiver for your team. And I really like his hands. I think that, he does have some punt return experience. Seems like a pretty fluid guy to me. But the one thing obviously that I'm concerned about with him is his route tree, right? It's probably not a ton, but then I said the same thing about Gabriel Davis and
Nevada offense.
The Nevada offense. But I said the same thing about Gabriel Davis. But I do want to see what Romeo Dubs can do because he is a guy that of all these Senior Bowl guys, as I was kind of trying to sift through and figure out like who's the most intriguing, he was intriguing to me. He was. So him, Austin, and Dotson will be the 3 guys I'm probably looking at the most.
And it's going to be really fun too, because like Pierre Martinez comes in and says thoughts on Treylon Burks. Yes, there is that Debo comp where you can utilize Treylon Burks in multiple ways. He can be used on the boundary with his 4.4 speed at 6'3", 225. He can be used in the slot. He can also be used as a jet sweep running back type of guy. Treylon Burks, if he's on the board at 25, should definitely be in consideration for the Buffalo Bills. A little bit more raw, I think, than some of the other receivers. Like if Chris Olave is there, I think Chris Olave is so refined.
Yes.
Is so refined that Olave could be the alpha slot that we're looking for. Claude Puig comes in and says Sky Moore. He's this year's Deontay Johnson, in my opinion. So there are guys who aren't even at the Senior Bowl, who aren't even at the Shrine Bowl, like guys who are just not even a part of the conversation yet that we're going to be getting to over the next month, 2 months as we break things down here. To me, it's the 2 guys from SMU. I'm in love with Danny Gray as a sleeper return slot guy. I love his speed from the slot. And I really, really, really am looking forward to see Reggie Roberson. Like I said, Stephon Diggs light, the way he gets off the line of scrimmage and the way he sets up his routes, especially when he's going deep, he's very, very good. And I think injuries are going to scare teams away. He's got an injury history, but if he can stay healthy, if he can get into the right situation, Reggie Roberson could be one of the steals of this draft in the middle rounds. I really do like me, Reggie Roberson. So that brings us now to tight ends. Now, tight ends is weird, right? So I almost feel like anyone who's like a receiver only, and there's not too many of them. I almost feel like that's really not a consideration for the Buffalo Bills. The guys who are practically like the big slots. I think if even the undersized move guys, and there's not a lot of guys this year in the draft who are undersized move guys, I think are likely mostly off the board. I could be wrong here, but I'm pegging the Buffalo Bills, who I think are going to be in the market for a tight end. I'm pegging them for looking for a guy in the 6'4" to 6'7" range, a guy in the 245 to 260 pound range, sort of a Kyle Rudolph inline type, someone who can play off of Dawson Knox, who you can move around, give a little more flexibility to, and he can give them that 12 personnel flexibility, not having to use an offensive lineman like Tommy Doyle, and make yourself just a little bit more, just add a little, aura of mystique to it. What do you think about what the Buffalo Bills are looking for at the tight end position?
I agree, because here's the thing with the Bills, and we saw at the end of the season, they pretty much phased out Tommy Sweeney, right? I mean, he was inactive. They used Reggie Gilliam as that kind of hybrid type fullback move tight end, if you will. And it was the Dawson Knox show, right? It was like one tight end. That's what we're going with. Now, do I think that that's what they want to do all the time? Like, I don't know, right? But in my mind, you have Dawson Knox, who's your all around guy. If I'm the Bills, I'm with you. I'm looking for that bigger dude. They've already shown the propensity to put in Tommy Doyle in these big sort of heavier packages. And so for me, the guy in the Senior Bowl that kind of fits the bill for this is Daniel Bellinger from San Diego State. He's the guy that stands out to me. 6'6", 6'7", whatever, 250, 260. Obviously does a ton in the run game for San Diego State. Good red zone threat. To me, he would be like the perfect kind of TE2 to a Dawson Knox if the Bills were looking to get that bigger dude to come in and be that size guy. So in the Senior Bowl, he's probably not going to flash a lot statistically as far as like receptions, although he is a capable pass catcher. But Daniel Bellinger would be kind of the guy that, to me, in the Senior Bowl fits the mold of a guy the Bills might be looking for.
Yeah, I got to throw this one out here because people want.
Oh yeah,
what the people
of
want.
Of course.
One of this year's favorites, due in large part to Randy Harmon, is going to be Charlie Kohler from Iowa State. 6'6", 250-pound guy, very good in the red zone. Comes from that Iowa State system where they use a lot of tight ends. Low key Isaiah Likely too, and that's the thing where I don't think the Buffalo Bills are in the market for a move tight end, but for a move tight end, Isaiah Likely can put a licking on some people. And having him and Dawson Knox sort of hedges your bets in case you can't afford Dawson Knox. It gives you this really odd, just sort of dynamicism I'm just making up words. I'm just going to continue to use this word I made up at the tight end position with these two guys that you can just move around. So Isaiah Likely's fun too, but Isaiah Likely is also likely a second rounder. Look, the tight ends are loaded, right? Trey McBride from Colorado State, we haven't even gotten to yet. The Bills have had their eyes on Trey McBride. The Buffalo Bills have had their eyes on him. We know that for a fact. Can confirm their scouts have been in the press box at Colorado State games this year. Charlie Kohler from Iowa State, Cole Turner from Nevada.
I like Cole Turner too. For some reason, I'm like drawn to Nevada guys this year. I don't know why.
The Nevada offense is fun. I love Cole Turner too as a go up and get it guy. But the thing about Cole Turner is I don't know if Cole Turner can block. And I don't know if the Buffalo Bills are going to want a guy who
I know. That's why I like
really showing a willingness as a blocker. Yeah. Jeremy Ruckert from Ohio State, sort of that like Nick Vannett mold of those Ohio State guys who never produce in college, but get to the NFL and sort of play a role. Jeremy Ruckert, Jake Ferguson, Barry Alvarez is like nephew or grandson or something from Wisconsin. Jeremiah Hall, the fullback from Oklahoma, all on the national side. On the American side, Isaiah Likely from Coastal, the big slot. Grant Calcaterra from SMU, the guy who like took a couple of years off. You remember him back in the day at Oklahoma. Daniel Bellinger, as you mentioned, my boy Greg Dulcich from UCLA, and the sort of the Reggie Gilliam, I think maybe Reggie Gilliam with an extra 30 pounds of this year's draft class. And that's Connor Hayward, the fullback tight end crossbreed from Michigan State, I believe, brother of Cameron Hayward of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I'll tell you what, your guy is Daniel Bellinger. And I watched a couple of San Diego State games this year, and I can tell you without a doubt that they had some of the most miserable quarterback play I've ever seen in my entire fucking life. Like their quarterbacks were awful. So Daniel Bellinger is 100% a guy who like was invisible in college because his quarterbacks just sucked. And he gets to the National Football League and it's like, whoa, what the fuck was this dude? Like, where did you find this dude?
I like him, man. I do like him.
Right now, TDN has him as a late round pick. He's another guy who I see just like one of Joe Marino's favorites at the Shrine Bowl in Jelani Woods.
Yeah, Jelani.
Just creeping up boards. I like Austin Allen from Nebraska, 6'8", 260 pounds. He played in the NFLPA Bowl. I see Cade Otton in the comments section. He's not even playing in this game to my knowledge, unless I missed it. I don't think Cade Otton's playing in this game. He's a guy.
Let me take a look.
He's another guy in the middle rounds. Just so many tight ends. The Buffalo Bills have to pull the trigger on a tight end this year. My guy is Greg Dulcich, converted wide receiver, played under Chip Kelly. So he's played in an NFL-ish scheme, played a lot of 12 personnel at UCLA, did a lot of different multiple things at UCLA. He can go over the top and has that speed to go over the top of the middle of the football field. I really like Greg Dulcich. I think he brings it as a receiver and a blocker. Obviously, everyone's going to be moving towards Kohler and Bellinger in the middle rounds. My guy in the middle rounds is Dulcich, but I wouldn't mind any of the three. And then Trey McBride. I mean, this dude just an absolute hog. Like, if anyone in this draft has Travis Kelce potential, like Trey McBride could be a sleeping giant because, again, underutilized, right? Underutilized at Colorado State. I shouldn't even say underutilized at Colorado State. Just I don't know if the talent around him was good enough to really accentuate just how good Trey McBride is. And he was still really good, like consistently 100-yard receiver almost every single week. Guy's just an absolute hoss.
And could we see, if the Bills do want to put a premium there, could we see maybe a shift in philosophy with a new offensive coordinator
100%.
utilizing 2 tight ends in the passing game?
100%.
You could see that. And so now all of a sudden that's on the table as a potential option.
I wouldn't be surprised if you see the Buffalo Bills add a free agent tight end this year. Not even like a Tyler Kroft level, but just bring in another Jacob Hollister type and draft a guy in somewhere between rounds 3 and 6. And it's, those two guys, Dawson Knox, Quentin Morris, Tommy Sweeney, all in a competition. Obviously, Dawson Knox is your TE1, and then everyone's battling it out. And I wouldn't be surprised if we go back to 3 tight ends next year. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah. So just, you can't go wrong. I look at this. I'm not so high on Calcaterra because he's older. But if we drafted any of these guys, I wouldn't be mad. I really wouldn't. I think I'd be mad if we took a fullback like Jeremiah Hall or Connor Haywood. But if we took any of these true tight ends in this draft, in the Senior Bowl, I wouldn't be upset with any of them. I wouldn't be upset with any of them because they all bring a different type of skill set. So, Claude says, "But I don't want any converted guys. We got to wait 3 years for." Greg Dulcich is completely converted, right? He's been converted since he got to UCLA. He was a wide receiver in high school, so you don't have to worry about that. Trust me, guy's 6'5", 250 pounds. He ain't a wide receiver no more. Trust me, Greg Dulcich is a guy. I think if you guys go and look into his game a little bit, you're gonna come away really impressed with Greg Dulcich. And again, I like a lot of those UCLA guys. I know that Zach Charbonnet went back, but Sean Ryan, their left tackle, who's going to kick into left guard, he's a junior, so I don't think he's in the Senior Bowl. We're going to talk about him a ton in the pre-draft process. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the quarterback, I really like. Kyle Phillips, the wide receiver, I really like. There's a ton of UCLA dudes. I think Chip Kelly, that's a school that I consistently want to be scouting because I feel like Chip Kelly is preparing these guys for the National Football League with his experience from the National Football League. So definitely a college that I'm going to keep my eyes on. Cade Otton, Will Mallory, again, 2 guys not playing this game, but also, again, just shows you how deep this tight end class is. And that brings us to the final thing to talk about here, and that is the offensive line. Obviously, you look at tackle, pretty set with Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown at your bookends, left tackle, right tackle. Tommy Doyle is still a little raw, but he is an offensive tackle. So I did
like that they started working him in a little, getting him some playing time at the end of the year, getting his feet wet. I did like that.
If DTR is returning, I haven't seen him in any of these bowl games. I also didn't see where he is returning. I also don't know how it's possible because he's been playing college football for like 6 years. But I know that UCLA just got Dylan Gabriel. So maybe DTR, I'd have to look into that. But Eric B, I think DTR is in the draft, but I also could be wrong because I haven't seen him in any of these preseason bowl or pre-draft bowl games. So I'm gonna look into that. Eric B, thank you for that. He's still raw, but I think if the Bills go for a true tackle, right, they're probably looking for a veteran, like a guy they can sign. I don't see the Buffalo Bills drafting a true tackle in this. So I go to the Senior Bowl and I see a whole bunch of these guys, and they're like 6'6", 305 pounds. Well, they can play guard. Yeah, like they could play zone guard. Dylan Gabriel did flip to OU. I'm gonna have to look into that. Like I look at like Bernard Raymond's probably gonna end up being a first round draft pick. He might even end up being like early second round draft pick. 6'6", 305. He did go back. Okay, DTR went back. I take DTR off my board. Thank you guys for that. I appreciate that. 6'6", 305. Like I don't envision that as a guard, at least the type of guard that I want for the Buffalo Bills. So if they're drafting offensive linemen, I think it's very much, if they're drafting a tackle in this class, it's going to be a tackle that they plan on converting to guard. And if they have to use him at tackle, they'll use him at tackle. Kind of like Zion Johnson, who we're going to talk about in a little bit. What do you think the Buffalo Bills are going to be looking for on offensive line in this draft?
God, I mean, I think at this point, you have to feel at least somewhat vindicated if you're Brandon Beane with the Spencer Brown pick last year. Obviously, he's likely going to be your starting right tackle for the foreseeable future. You've got Deion Dawkins. You also invested in Tommy Doyle last year. You still have Darrell Williams, who's going to be your likely starting right guard, but can also play right tackle. So if I'm the Bills this year, I mean, this has got to be the year to go for interior, right? Like if you're gonna kind of beef up that interior, and right now we don't know what the future holds for Ryan Bates. He's an RFA. You're probably gonna get him back at some kind of second round tender or something similar. And you do have Darrell Williams still under contract, and you're comfortable going into the season with those two guys as your guards. Like, what's going to happen with John Feliciano? Your draft pick last year that you picked late, that was a versatile sort of interior guy, and Jack Anderson's gone, right? Forrest Lamp didn't work out. Ike Butker is coming off of a major injury, right? So is this the time now for the Bills to really retool the interior of that offensive line outside of Mitch Morse, obviously, and go for some big fatties on the interior of the offensive line? So that's what I would like to see them do. Personally, like you said, if it's a tackle that they're going to convert to guard, please make it at least a dude that's like beefy, a little beefier, right?
Speaking of beefy, Trek Reviewer comes in with one of the guys that I have my eyes on in the Senior Bowl. Daniel Falele from Minnesota, 6'8", 380 pounds, big boy. Talking to our guy here at Cover One, Russ Brown. He thinks Daniel Falele's best fit is at right guard. So to me, Darrell Williams, I think he's going to come back next year. I can see the Bills trying to rework his deal.
Yeah.
But also I can see Darrell Williams' time in Buffalo being very short-lived. Like he might only have one more year left, in terms of the Darrell Williams train. So a guy like Daniel Falele in the second round, if he's there on the board, he might go in the first, depending on the week he has here. He could be your right guard backup, and he could be your right tackle backup. And hell, this dude's even athletic enough to where he could probably be a backup at left tackle as well and play left tackle in a pinch. So Daniel Falele can come in his first year, be your backup right guard, develop behind Darrell Williams to eventually replace him. He can, if Spencer Brown gets hurt, play right tackle. And if Deion Dawkins gets hurt, God forbid, he can maybe even slide over and in a pinch play left tackle. So Daniel Falele, even if he doesn't start right away, he brings you a ton of versatility along the offensive line. And while you're developing him at one specific spot, the one that I have in mind is right guard, he can also contribute at tackle. Sean Ryan does the same exact thing, but he does it on the left-hand side, where he would be a left guard with left tackle flex. Again, Bernard Raymond is a name that I need to do more research on, but the 6'6", 305 scares me. Doesn't seem like interior offensive line material to me. A lot of people are telling me I'm dead wrong, so I have to go back and I have to look at that. But there's also a lot of rumors and rumblings now that Bernard Raymond might make his way to the first round of the draft. That is how much a lot of people are falling in love with him. The guy I have my eye on is Zion Johnson from Boston College, left tackle at BC, also played left guard, most likely kicks into left guard. Here's what I like about Zion Johnson. Zion Johnson gives you flexibility. To me, he comes in right away and competes with Ryan Bates. He comes in right away from day one and competes with Ryan Bates.
Day one, yep.
And if he, early on, like first week of training camp, comes in and he beats out Ryan Bates, it's clear from the first week of practice, Zion's our dude at left guard. Then Ryan Bates kicks back into center and starts competing with Mitch Morse, and you can get a pretty significant cap relief, which you can carry over into 2023 if you decide to go with Ryan Bates as your center as opposed to Mitch Morse. That's something that I envision for a guy like Zion if he's on the board, and the only place you're going to get Zion Johnson is at 25.
Yep. Yeah. No, I'm with you there. I don't necessarily know that I'm ready to go to the Ryan Bates at center instead of Mitch Morse this year, but I do
Mitch
like
Morse extension is also someone mentioned in the comment section. Very viable option as well.
I do like the idea of Zion Johnson coming in and competing. This is tough for me because part of me is like, go for a guy who can come in and play left guard right away. Then part of me is like, well, is Ryan Bates the truth at left guard? And maybe we really just need to find the long-term answer at right guard and plan for Darrell Williams to be gone. And that's where I kind of like struggle a bit in trying to figure out what my preference is, because I think of a guy like Zion Johnson, who's likely a left guard coming in right away, that's great. Same thing for a guy like Lexus Smith, right? Who's going to mainly be a left guard, probably coming in right away. Another guy at the Senior Bowl, like later round guy, obviously. But yeah, that to me is the question. The big question, right? Is these guys that are going to get picked high in the draft, like Zion Johnson, that are really probably going to be left guard only, at least to start with. Are you willing to invest significant draft capital on a guy like that when you might have the answer in Ryan Bates? Now, it could turn out something weird happens and Ryan Bates gets tendered and somehow we don't retain, like, I don't know, right? Or maybe he doesn't get tendered, which would be a shock to me.
Mm-hmm.
And in which case, then Zion Johnson to me is clearly
Ooh.
like in play at
Yep.
25, right? So this Ryan Bates situation kind of will dictate that, I think. And I think the answer here is yes, Eric. I mean, at this point, you have
He
to
is a
say
bust.
the answer
I
is
don't want
yes.
him. I don't even want him in training camp next year. Cut him. It's a minimal cap hit, like, or cap savings, like 1 point. I don't care. I don't want him. Trade him for a conditional 7th round pick or cut him. I don't even want Cody Ford on my team heading into training camp. I just think he represents everything that you don't want. He's clearly not a process guy. Like, how many chances does this guy get? And he just soft as hell every time he steps on the football field. But anyway, looking at these
do you trust the Bills front office to make the right decision at the interior? We saw Ryan Bates sitting on the pine for months.
Wyatt Teller, Quentin Spain, you know, even though they're not on the team anymore, I think that they found solid dudes there, right? And then, you know, like I said, Rick Bates, it took him a while, but they found some talent there. Ike Butker, I would argue, is still a pretty decent offensive lineman. They found some talent there. So to me, I trust them to find the talent. I just don't trust them to put the right talent starting lineup. I should say, but they show that they've had at least some acumen to draft guys successfully. Deion Dawkins as well. I know that was McDermott, Spencer Brown. So they've shown the acumen.
You could say that this is the one area they've botched the most as far as, like,
100%. I
mean, the tenure here in the last 4 years.
If they had kept Quentin Spain, if they had kept Wyatt Teller, we could be looking at a whole different type of offensive line right now. And maybe the I wouldn't say maybe the Buffalo Bills are playing Super Bowl this week because the offense wasn't the reason why they lost that football game. The offense finally found its footing. It seemed like for the first time in a long time, the offensive line finally found its footing. But Pierre Martinez comes in and says, "Is that a Bobby Johnson issue?" Who knows? Maybe Bobby Johnson is leaving because he was sick and tired of, the Buffalo Bills choosing a certain type of offensive lineman over the type of offensive lineman he wanted. Like maybe he wanted Quentin Spain, maybe he wanted Wyatt Teller, and the Buffalo Bills wanted Ike Butker and fucking John Feliciano. So who knows? Maybe that's part of Bobby Johnson's issue in wanting to leave, but that's all speculation, and that we'll never know anything like that. But looking at these rosters here, the names that I have highlighted, I mean, we can go through all the names here, but the names I have, like, I'm not going to talk about Trevor Penning because I think he's tackle only. But I do like Trevor Penning. I like Max Mitchell, but he's tackle only. I like Braxton Jones, but he's tackle only. I'm looking at, like I said, I want to take a closer look at Bernard Raymond from Central Michigan because a lot of people are telling me he has guard flex. Former wide receiver, by the way. Guy was a former wide receiver, Bernard Raymond. Daniel Falele, obviously. I like Luke Godke from Central Michigan. I think has right guard, right tackle flex. Can maybe do the same thing I just mentioned with Daniel Falele.
That was a guy Russell Brown said to keep an eye on too from cover one was Luke Godke.
Another guy that Russ likes, I know that Eric Turner likes, is Marquise Hayes from Oklahoma. Comped him to Quentin Spain. Cole Strange is a guy that our man Merck likes from UT Chattanooga. Keep an eye on him. We mentioned Zion Johnson. My boy is Jamari Salyer. I love Jamari Salyer.
That was my highlighted guy, number one, who I'm interested in. But I also think he's going to be probably.
He's a second round pick. He might not even be on the board for us at the second round. He might not even be on the board.
Like, it's the same situation as last year where you're like, you're going to draft the guy at whatever we were, 30. Do you make a move up in the second round and get a guy like Salyer?
For those who don't know who Jamari Salyer is, yes, he's a little bit shorter at like 6'2", 6'3", about 330 pounds, a big old hoss, right? Big boy, but he's so nimble, kind of like Cody Ford almost, where you're like, he'll never play tackle, but then maybe he could end up playing left tackle in the National Football League. But his best position with all that athleticism, I feel like would be left guard. And he would just kind of like Zion. He's my 1B to Zion Johnson's 1A. Jamari Sawyer, if he's still there in the second round, on that left side is where I would put him. But in the national championship game, right, they were getting worked inside, and they moved Sawyer from left tackle to right guard in the middle of the national championship game, and it added a little bit of beef to their running game and helped Georgia out a little bit. So you see the flexibility of Jamari Sawyer there. A couple of people now have mocked and mentioned Dylan Parham from Memphis. Unless something has changed drastically, he's a zone block only guard, weighs 280 pounds.
Yeah, I'm
So
not.
He's not even on my board, not even on my draft board. I don't think the Buffalo Bills have any interest in a guy like that at 280 pounds. I could be wrong, but
I pretty much, if it was someone who was under 300 pounds as a guard, I kind of like, I didn't spend the time to look at him. Now, I mean, again, that's just for now, right? I'm sure I will at some point, but for now, no, I'm not entertaining the idea of a 285-pound guard at this point.
Yeah, and then speaking of draft crushes, a guy who's been a draft crush of mine for a long time. Speaking of another big beefy boy, Kentucky right tackle, likely right guard of the National Football League, Darian Kennard is someone to keep an eye on this week. Chris Paul from Tulsa is someone I'm keeping an eye on. Dean Kindig is a big fan of this guy. Maybe a little bit of Va Tech redemption in Lasita Smith, the guard from Va Tech, and Cade Mays from Tennessee, right tackle at Tennessee, likely to kick into guard. He measured very well today at the Senior Bowl. Russ Brown was very intrigued by Cade Mays and his measurables. So, I mean, there are other guys, Justin Schaefer, Ed Ingram, Luke Fortner as well. But the guys I just mentioned are the guys that I got my eyes on. Anyone else you got your eyes on here as we close things out?
Cetus on my list. Salyer, I cannot say his name. Sorry. Mays is on my list. Kennard, Zion Johnson, Ed Ingram is on my list. As a more of a zone guy, but he does have a little bit more size to him. So I am going to look at Ed Ingram as another guy, and then just the other guys you mentioned.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, solid almost 2 hours tonight. And we are, so we got 120 people, and it's Monday night at like almost 11 o'clock, pushing 11 o'clock here. So that just shows how awesome you guys here in Bills Mafia are. And we can't wait to continue having so much fun in the pre-draft process with you guys in the pre-free agency process. We'll be back on Thursday to talk about defensive prospects from the Senior Bowl. Who knows? Maybe we'll have an offensive coordinator by then. I doubt it, but we might. And maybe something else will happen by Thursday. But right now, the plan for Thursday is to mention or at least get to all of the defensive prospects from the Senior Bowl as well. The Buffalo Bills have a glaring need at cornerback, at defensive tackle, and at edge rusher. And according to some people, they might need a linebacker as well. So the Buffalo Bills will be in the market for plenty of defense players. I sort of set Twitter ablaze with my mock draft this morning. I don't know if anyone saw
I noticed that. And you know what? You like tagged me in that post, and I was getting all these
I blew your shit up today, didn't I? I blew your shit up.
What the hell? What the hell is going
on? So for anyone who's not on the old
Oh.
Twitter machine, I just ran a mock draft for fun. I wanted to watch the world burn, and I traded Tremaine Edmonds and 2 first-round picks to the New York Giants for the 5th overall pick, and then took David Ajobo. Randy comes in and says, "What's the big announcement?" We almost forgot. See, so the big announcement was leaked on social media, so we're not revealing anything tonight. But Kendall Mirsky has rejoined the ranks. He's no longer producer Kendall. He's outgrown the producer role here at the Air Raid Hour. But Kendall Mirsky has joined Cover One as a film analyst. He will be working next season along with guys like Eric Turner and Anthony Prohaska and doing a bunch of film stuff. I know that they're doing a film show with Senior Bowl clips with guys from the Senior Bowl. They're bringing down Senior Bowl prospects on Friday night. Eric Turner, Anthony Prohaska, Kendall Mirsky. They're going to be breaking down Senior Bowl guys on Friday night. Must watch. I'll be tuning in. You should be tuning in as well. But Kendall's going to be a regular on the Air Raid Hour again, at least through the pre-draft process until we can get him a show of his own. So we are welcoming back Kendall Mirsky, producer Kendall, to the Air Raid Hour. So that will be a heck of a lot of fun to get that draft trio back together again. And we'll also be bringing on the likes of Casey Reed to talk draft and Kyle Naps to talk more general NFL stuff. So we have you covered here. I know I was talking to Ryan Sullivan as well. I'm so pumped.
I mean,
Trying to
think
flip
about
all
this
these
week, right?
bets.
We have Russell's down at the Senior Bowl. We
Mhm.
had offensive preview for Senior Bowl Monday. We got defensive preview Thursday.
Film breakdown Friday.
Eric and Kendall and Anthony doing film breakdown Friday. We have the Senior Bowl this weekend, and then Monday we'll do Senior Bowl reactions and get
Mhm.
Russell on the show. Like it's gonna be like we got it covered, man. I mean, we
Yeah.
just have it absolutely covered.
Yeah. So we have you covered here at Con. And I'm gonna, did I lose it here?
You're kind of going in and out there.
I think I'm back now. Am I back?
Yeah, kind of.
Well, we'll do the best we can here for my last second. But listen, if you are watching this live, before you head out, smash the like button. If you are watching this on or on tape delay, make sure to leave a comment. And over the course of the week, Dave and I will make sure to pop in here and respond to any comment that you leave in the comment section. And of course, if you are listening on demand audio only on Apple, Spotify, or whatever major podcasting platform you listen on, make sure to leave us a nice little 5-star and a review. Always appreciated. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, go Bills.
Go Bills.